Millionaire's card was declined. Then a street girl shocked everyone. Michael Thompson felt sweat dripping down his forehead as he tried to process what had just happened. In over 20 years of running companies, he had never been through such an embarrassing situation as this. The annoying beep of the card machine echoed through the supermarket when the payment processing company employee announced that the transaction had been denied. The cashier, a middle-aged woman named Deborah, couldn't contain a loud laugh that soon spread to the other employees present. "Well, looks like the golden card isn't working today, huh, boss?" said Deborah, making sure to raise her voice so other customers could hear. Michael tried to maintain his composure, though he felt his face burning with shame. He pulled another card from his wallet, a black one with an even higher limit. "Try this one, please," he asked, trying to sound calm. The machine made the same annoying sound, denied again. "Oh my, must be a system problem," murmured Deborah, but her smile said otherwise. The employees who were arranging the nearby shelves had stopped working to watch the scene. Michael could hear the whispers and some muffled giggles. It was as if the ground would open beneath his feet. It was then that he felt a gentle touch on his arm. Looking down, he saw a little girl about 8 years old, with dark hair tied in a simple ponytail. She wore a faded red t-shirt and shorts that had seen better days. Her large, expressive eyes watched him with a mixture of curiosity and compassion. "Do you need some help?" asked the girl with a sweet but firm voice. Michael was surprised. How had that child entered the supermarket without anyone noticing? And why was she addressing him? "Thank you, dear, but it's nothing you can solve," he replied, trying to sound kind despite the embarrassment. The girl looked at the purchases on the counter, a modest cart with some basic products, and then at Deborah's mocking face. "How much is it?" she asked the cashier. "None of your business, girl. Get out of here before I call security," Deborah replied irritably. "It's $87 in," said Michael, not understanding where this was going. To his surprise, the girl put her hand in her shorts pocket and pulled out a handful of coins and some crumpled bills. "I'll pay for you," she said, starting to count the money in her palm. Silence fell over the supermarket. Deborah stopped laughing, the employees stopped whispering, and even some passing customers slowed down to watch the scene. "No, you can't," murmured Michael, feeling a lump in his throat. "You don't need to do this." "Yes, I do," the girl replied with determination. "You helped me once. Now it's my turn to help." Michael tried to remember where he might have known that child, but his mind was too confused to process information. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. This really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The girl counted the coins twice to make sure she had enough, exactly $89. She carefully placed everything on the counter as if each coin were a treasure. "Here it is," she told Deborah, who now watched the scene with an expression somewhere between surprise and embarrassment. "Girl, where did you get this money?" asked Deborah, trying to regain some authority in the situation. "Selling candy at the school gate. I've been saving coin by coin for months," replied the girl, raising her chin with pride. Michael felt his legs trembling. "I couldn't accept that a child clearly in a vulnerable situation would pay for her purchases with money she had saved up with so much effort. "I can't accept this," he said, bending down to be at the girl's eye level. "This is your money. You worked hard for it." "And didn't you work hard for yours?" retorted the girl, surprising everyone with the maturity of her question. Michael didn't know how to respond. How could such a young child have so much wisdom? "How did you know I helped you?" he asked. "Remember that heavy rain about 2 weeks ago? You were leaving the bank on the corner and saw me all wet, trying to protect my candies. You bought everything I had and even gave me $50 extra. Said I should go home because it was very cold." The memory came back like lightning. Michael vaguely remembered the episode. He had been in a hurry, rushing to get home, when he saw the soaked girl desperately trying to protect a box of chocolate truffles from the rain. Without thinking much, he had bought all the candies and given her some extra money. To him, it had been an automatic gesture, almost unimportant. "You remember me," the girl continued, smiling. "Because of what you did, I was able to buy medicine for my grandma and still had money to eat that day. You saved my day. Now I want to save yours." The child's words hit Michael like a punch in the stomach. He looked around and realized everyone in the supermarket was listening to the conversation. Deborah had completely stopped mocking and was now looking down, clearly embarrassed. "What's your name?" asked Michael. "Emma Grace, but everyone calls me Emma," she replied. "And you're Mr. Michael, right? I saw your name on the card you tried to use." Michael nodded, still trying to process the whole surreal situation. "Emma, I'll accept your money as a loan, but only as a loan. I'll pay it all back with interest, you can be sure of that." "No need for interest, Mr. Michael. You just need to keep being a good person like you were to me." Deborah, who had remained silent throughout the conversation, cleared her throat and began processing the payment. Her hands trembled slightly as she counted the coins. "Sorry for laughing, sir," she murmured, unable to look Michael in the eye. "I didn't know that." "It's all right," interrupted Michael, though it wasn't all right at all. The humiliation still burned, but now there was something stronger: gratitude for that child, and shame at being helped by someone in a much more difficult situation than his own. As Deborah finished processing the payment, Michael took out his phone to check his bank accounts. What he saw left him even more confused. All his accounts were frozen. There had been no warning, no prior notification. It was as if, all of a sudden, all his money had simply disappeared. "Is there a problem with your account, sir?" asked one of the employees who had stopped to watch the scene. "It seems so," replied Michael, trying to call his bank from his phone. After several minutes on hold, he finally got through to a representative who confirmed what he already suspected. All his accounts had been frozen by court order due to a tax investigation. "Tax investigation," repeated Michael, loudly enough for Emma to hear. "But I've always kept everything in order. I have the best accountants in town." The representative explained that he couldn't give details over the phone, but that Michael should contact his lawyer as soon as possible. "Are you in trouble?" asked Emma, genuinely concerned. "I'm not sure," replied Michael, hanging up the phone. "It seems like someone is trying to cause problems for me." At that moment, the supermarket's automatic door opened, and a tall man with graying hair and an impeccable suit walked in, heading toward them. Michael immediately recognized the figure. It was his brother, Richard. "Michael, what a coincidence to run into you here," said Richard, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I heard you're going through some financial troubles." The way Richard pronounced the word coincidence made Michael immediately suspicious. His younger brother had always been envious of his success, but Michael never imagined he would be capable of something like this. "How did you know I was here?" asked Michael, narrowing his eyes. "Oh, you know how news travels fast," replied Richard, looking around the supermarket, "especially when it involves the most powerful businessman in town having his card declined." Emma, who had stayed quiet during the conversation, watched Richard carefully. There was something about his manner that she didn't like. "Uncle Richard," said Michael, making sure to emphasize the family relation, "if you know anything about this investigation, you'd better tell me now." "Me? How would I know anything?" replied Richard, but his fake smile gave him away. "But if you want, I can lend you some money until things get sorted out. Let's say $1,000. The offer was so ridiculously low for someone who knew Michael's financial situation that it sounded almost like a provocation. "No, thank you," said Michael, picking up the shopping bags. "I'd rather handle this my way." "Suit yourself," said Richard, shrugging. "But if you change your mind, you know where to find me." As Richard walked away, Emma tugged on Michael's shirt sleeve. "Mr. Michael, that man is not a good person," she whispered. "Why do you say that?" asked Michael, intrigued by the girl's perception. "Before you got here, I saw him talking to the cashier lady over there. He gave her money and whispered something in her ear. After that, she started laughing when your card was declined." Michael felt his blood boil. He looked at Deborah, who was now avoiding his gaze at all costs. "Are you sure about what you saw?" he asked Emma. "Yes, I am. I stand here by the door almost every day selling candy. I know everyone who comes and goes. That man never comes here. Today was the first time." Michael walked back to the checkout, where Deborah was finishing with another customer. "Deborah, can I talk to you for a minute?" "I'm working," she replied, not meeting his eyes. "It's about the man who spoke with you earlier." Deborah became visibly nervous, looking around as if searching for an escape route. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you do, said Michael, keeping his voice calm but firm. The girl here saw you talking. She saw him give you money. Emma nodded at Deborah, confirming Michael's words. Look, Deborah began to stammer. I didn't know it would cause trouble. What exactly did he ask you to do? Deborah looked around once more, checking if any of the supervisors were nearby. He said you were his brother, and that you had an old family joke. He asked me to laugh when your card was declined, said you would think it was funny. He gave me $200 just for that. Michael felt a mix of anger and sadness. The anger was directed at his brother, but the sadness came from realizing how far Richard was willing to go to humiliate him. And you believed I would find it funny to be humiliated in public? Asked Michael. I needed the money, murmured Deborah. My daughter is sick, and the medicine is expensive. When he offered the money, I didn't think straight. Michael looked at Emma, who was watching the whole conversation attentively, and then back at Deborah. I understand your situation, he said, but you need to understand that what you did was wrong. Humiliating someone for money is no joke. I know, said Deborah, with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, if I could go back. Michael Thompson sighed. It was clear that Deborah had just been a pawn in Richard's dirty game. Keep the money, he said. Use it to buy your daughter's medicine. But next time someone asks you to humiliate another person, think twice. Deborah nodded vigorously, clearly relieved to not be in more trouble. Michael Thompson and Emma left the supermarket together. The afternoon sun was strong, and Michael Thompson realized he had no idea how he was going to resolve this whole situation. Where are you going now? Asked Emma. I need to go to my office, see if I can figure out what's going on, replied Michael Thompson. And you? Where do you live? With my grandma, in a small apartment near the bus station, said Emma. But if you want, I can go with you. Maybe I can help somehow. Michael Thompson was about to refuse the offer when his cell phone rang. It was Robert, his lawyer. Michael Thompson, where are you? I need to speak with you urgently. I'm leaving the supermarket on Maple Street. What happened? I can't talk over the phone. Meet me at the office in an hour. And Michael Thompson, bring all the documentation you have at home. It seems someone tampered with the company safe. Michael Thompson hung up the phone, feeling like the world was collapsing around him. Trouble? Asked Emma. A lot, replied Michael Thompson. Someone stole important documents from my company. Do you think it was the same man who was here? Michael Thompson looked at the girl, impressed again by her ability to connect the dots. It's possible, he said. Very possible. Then let's figure it out, said Emma with determination. Two heads are better than one, right? Michael Thompson couldn't help but smile despite the whole situation. That girl had something special, an inner strength he admired. All right, he said, but first let's tell your grandma that you'll be with me for a few hours. They walked to Emma's apartment, an old but well-kept building near the bus station. Emma's grandma, a lady with white hair and kind eyes named Mrs. Hazel, greeted Michael Thompson with surprise. Emma told me she knew you, said Mrs. Hazel. You're the man who helped her in the rain, right? Yes, I am, replied Michael Thompson. And today, she returned the favor in a way I'll never forget. Mrs. Hazel smiled proudly at her granddaughter. This girl has a heart too big for her own good, she said, but I'm glad you two met again. Mrs. Hazel, may I take Emma with me for a few hours? I'm going through some trouble and she offered to help. Of course, dear, just take care of each other. On the way to the office, Michael Thompson told Emma a bit about his company and about the complicated relationship he had with Richard. My brother was always jealous, explained Michael Thompson. When we were children, he would break my toys when I wasn't looking. As teenagers, he told lies about me to our parents. I always thought he would grow out of it. People like that don't change, Mr. Michael Thompson, said Emma, with a wisdom that surprised Michael Thompson. My grandma always says that those with envy in their heart can't be happy. Your grandma seems like a very wise woman. She is. She worked her whole life cleaning office buildings, knows a lot of people and always has a story to tell. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When they arrived at the building where Michael's office was located, the doorman, a middle-aged man named Mr. Walter, waved to them. "Good afternoon, Dr. Michael. You've had quite a few visitors today." "Visitors? What kind of visitors?" "Your brother Richard was here this morning. He said he had a meeting scheduled with you. Since he has the spare key, I let him go up." Michael felt his stomach drop. Richard had a spare key for emergencies, but he had never used it without giving notice. "How long was he up there?" "About 2 hours, more or less. He left carrying a large briefcase." Michael and Emma exchanged glances. The puzzle pieces were fitting together in a very concerning way. "Mr. Walter, could you show me the security camera footage?" "Of course, Dr. Michael, come with me." They went to the security room, where Mr. Walter accessed the day's recordings. The footage clearly showed Richard entering the building at 9 in the morning and leaving at 11, carrying a briefcase he definitely didn't have when he entered. "Can I get a copy of this footage?" asked Michael. "Yes, Doctor. I'll save it to a flash drive for you." While Mr. Walter prepared the copy, Emma watched the footage carefully. "Mr. Michael, look at his face when he's leaving," she said, pointing to the screen. "He's smiling. He seems very happy about something." Michael looked at the frozen image of Richard on the screen. The satisfied smile on his brother's face was unmistakable. "Let's go upstairs," said Michael, taking the flash drive. "I need to see what he took." In the office, Michael went straight to the safe. It was open, which was already strange because he always kept it locked. Inside, several folders with important documents were missing: original contracts, partnership agreements, old financial records. "He took exactly what could incriminate me in an investigation," murmured Michael. "Or what could prove your innocence," added Emma. Michael looked at the girl, again impressed by her intelligence. "You're right. These documents prove that all my transactions have always been legal." At that moment, Robert, the lawyer, arrived at the office. He was a 50-year-old man with graying hair and a worried look. "Michael, we need to talk," he said, greeting Emma with a nod. "The situation is more serious than I imagined." "What did you find out?" "The tax investigation was started based on an anonymous tip. Someone sent documents to the IRS claiming you have undeclared accounts overseas." "But that's a lie," exclaimed Michael. "I know it is," said Robert, "but the documents look quite convincing. They include your signatures and everything." "Forged signatures," said Michael. "Probably, but we'll need to prove that. And to prove it, we need the original documents that were in your safe." Michael told Robert about Richard's visit and showed him the security camera footage. "This complicates things," said Robert after watching the recordings. "Your brother had legal access to the office. It will be hard to prove he stole anything." "But I saw him paying the supermarket woman to humiliate me," said Emma. "Doesn't that prove he's a bad person?" Robert smiled at the girl. "Unfortunately, that's not legal proof of anything more serious," he explained, "but it shows a pattern of behavior that might be useful." Michael sank into a chair, feeling the weight of the whole situation. "What do I do now?" he asked. "First, let's try to contact Richard and see if he admits taking the documents," said Robert. "If he cooperates, maybe we can resolve this without too much scandal." "And if he doesn't cooperate?" "Then we'll have to move to legal confrontation." Michael called Richard, putting the phone on speaker so everyone could hear. "Michael, how are you, brother?" said Richard with exaggerated cheerfulness in his voice. "Richard, I need you to return the documents you took from my office this morning." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "What documents?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "The security cameras filmed you leaving with a briefcase." "How that?" said Richard, as if it was something unimportant. "They were just some old papers you asked me to store years ago. I thought it was time to return them." Richard, stop lying. "You know very well what documents these are." "Look, Michael, I don't know why you're so nervous. If you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't worry about a tax investigation, right?" The way Richard said these words confirmed Michael's suspicions. His brother knew exactly what he was doing. "Where are the documents now?" asked Michael. "In a safe place," replied Richard. "And they'll stay there until this investigation is over. It's for your own good, brother. If you handed everything over to the authorities now, it might look like you're trying to hide something." Michael hung up the phone, frustrated. "He won't return them," said Robert. "We'll have to find another way to prove your innocence." "Mr. Michael," said Emma, who had remained quiet during the entire conversation. You remember if you have copies of these documents somewhere? Some I have scanned on the computer, said Michael, but the originals are more important for the investigation. And you never gave a copy to anyone else? An accountant? Another lawyer? Some partner? Michael thought for a moment. Actually, yes. My old partner, Jonathan Miller, must have copies of several of those documents, but he retired 5 years ago and moved to a farm in the countryside. Let's get in touch with him, said Robert. It won't be easy, said Michael. Jonathan was always a bit rustic, doesn't like phones, internet, these modern things. Then let's go to him, suggested Emma. It's a 4-hour trip, said Michael. Better than staying here waiting for things to get worse, retorted Emma. Robert agreed it was a good idea. They arranged to leave the next morning for Jonathan's farm. When they were leaving the office, Michael received a call from a number he didn't recognize. Michael Thompson, said a female voice on the other end of the line. Yes, it's me. This is the City Journal newsroom. We'd like to ask a few questions about the tax investigation being conducted against you. Michael felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. How had the press found out? No comment, he said, hanging up quickly. What happened? Asked Emma. The press already knows, said Michael. My reputation will be destroyed. Robert put his hand on Michael's shoulder. Calm down, we'll solve this, but now it's even more important to find that evidence as soon as possible. They went down to the parking lot, where Michael noticed there were several news vans on the street. How did they find out so fast? He murmured. Someone leaked the information, said Robert, and I have a good idea who it was. They managed to leave the building through the back exit, avoiding the reporters. Michael took Emma back home, promising to pick her up early the next morning for the trip. Mr. Michael, said Emma before getting out of the car, don't give up, okay? Good people like you always find a way to beat bad people like your brother. Thank you, Emma. I don't know what I would have done without you today. We help each other, right? That's how things work. Michael smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time since everything had started. The next morning, Michael came to pick up Emma at 6 a.m. She was ready with a small backpack on her back and a determined smile on her face. Grandma made sandwiches for the trip, she said, showing a wrapped package, and she gave me her blessing to help you. Your grandmother is a blessing in my life, said Michael. They hit the road to the countryside, with Robert following in another car. During the trip, Michael told more about Jonathan Miller. He was my first partner over 15 years ago, explained Michael. An honest, hard-working man, but he always dreamed of having a farm. When the company grew enough, he sold his share and made his dream come true. And you stayed friends? Yes, but we don't talk much. Every now and then he sends a letter telling about the crops, the animals. A real paper letter? Asked Emma, surprised. A real paper letter, laughed Michael. Jonathan is old school. After 4 hours of travel, they arrived at the farm. It was a simple but well-kept place, with a brick house, an orchard, and several animals roaming the yard. Jonathan Miller was a 65-year-old man with completely white hair, sun-tanned skin, and a welcoming smile. He greeted Michael with a strong hug. Michael, my boy, what a wonderful surprise, he said. And who are your companions? Michael introduced Robert and Emma, briefly explaining the situation he was going through. That brother of yours has always been trouble, said Jonathan, shaking his head. Since the days he used to show up at the office. Always had an eye for other people's things. You remember him? Of course I remember. Once he tried to convince me to sell my share of the company to him instead of you. He even offered more money. He never told me that, said Michael, surprised. Because he knew I wouldn't accept, said Jonathan. Money can't buy character, and you always had character, Michael. Your brother, well, let's just say he was always different. They sat on the porch of the house where Jonathan's wife, Mrs. Margaret, served coffee and homemade cake. Jonathan, I need to know if you still have copies of the company documents, said Michael. Especially the original contracts and the financial records from the early years. I do, said Jonathan. I kept everything in a folder in my office. You never know when you might need it, right? Michael felt a wave of relief. Can I take a look? Of course, let's go. Jonathan's office was small but organized. He went to a metal filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. "It's all here," he said, placing the folder on the table. "Contracts, balance sheets, bank statements, all properly notarized." Robert examined the documents carefully. "This is pure gold," he said. "With these documents, we can prove that all the company's transactions have always been transparent." "Can I take copies?" asked Michael. "You can take the originals," said Jonathan. "I made copies of everything and stored them elsewhere. These here are rightfully yours." While Robert organized the documents, Emma talked with Mrs. Margaret about the farm. "Do you like living here?" asked Emma. "I love it, my dear," replied Mrs. Margaret. "After spending a whole life in the city chasing money, here we found peace." "It must be nice to have peace," said Emma, with a melancholy tone in her voice. "You don't have peace, dear." "Sometimes I do," said Emma, "when I'm with my grandma, but I worry about the future, you know. And now I'm worried about Mr. Michael, too." Mrs. Margaret smiled and stroked the girl's hair. "Good people like you always find a way to be all right," she said. "Life has these good surprises for those who deserve them." When they were getting ready to leave, Jonathan called Michael aside. "Michael, can I give you some advice?" "Of course. Be careful with this situation. I've known your brother for a long time and he doesn't give up easily. If he was capable of doing what he did, he's capable of more." "What do you mean?" "I mean he might try to harm more people to get what he wants. That girl who's helping you, for example. He might try to use her against you." Michael felt a chill. "Do you think he'd be capable of that?" "I think he's capable of anything," said Jonathan. "I'm just warning you to stay alert." On the trip back, Michael grew thoughtful. Jonathan's words worried him, but he didn't want to scare Emma. "What are you thinking about?" asked Emma, noticing the silence. "About how I'm going to thank you for everything you've done for me," replied Michael. "No need to thank me, we help each other, remember?" When they reached town, it was already nighttime. Michael took Emma home and arranged to meet with Robert the next day to organize the defense. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. The next morning, Michael woke to the phone ringing insistently. It was Robert and his voice sounded urgent. "Michael, have you seen the newspaper today?" "No. Why?" "Your brother gave an interview. It's on the front page." Michael rushed to buy the paper from the corner newsstand. The headline took his breath away. "Brother of investigated businessman reveals, 'I always knew Michael was hiding money.'" In the article, Richard presented himself as a concerned citizen who had decided to cooperate with the authorities. He claimed he had always suspected his brother's activities and decided to hand over incriminating documents in the name of justice. Michael felt anger rising in his throat. Richard had turned his betrayal into an act of heroism. His cell phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Michael?" It was a woman's voice. "Yes. This is Amanda, your ex-wife. I saw the article in the paper." "Amanda?" Michael was surprised. They had divorced 3 years ago and rarely spoke. "I need to talk to you. It's about our daughter. Samantha, what happened to her?" "Nothing happened, but I need to revisit the alimony. With this whole situation, I don't know if you'll be able to keep up the payments." Michael felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. Amanda was using his hardship to try to increase the alimony. "Amanda, you know I've always met my obligations." "I know, but things have changed now, right? Samantha is 15 already. She wants to study abroad for college. I'm going to need more money." "We can talk about this when everything is settled." "I'd rather settle it now," said Amanda. "My lawyer will be in touch with you." Michael hung up the phone, feeling surrounded on all sides. It seemed like everyone was taking advantage of his vulnerability to try to get something from him. He went to pick up Emma to go to Robert's office. The girl immediately sensed something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. Michael showed her the paper and told her about Amanda's call. "It seems like everyone is against me," he said. "Not everyone," said Emma. "I'm on your side, Mr. Walter the doorman is on your side. Mr. Jonathan is on your side. And your daughter will be too when she knows the truth." "How can you be so sure?" "Because daughters know their fathers. Even when parents separate from mothers, daughters know who's who." Michael smiled despite all the sadness. Emma always found a way to put things in perspective. At Robert's office, they met to analyze the documents they had gotten from Jonathan. "With these documents, we can prove that all the company's transactions have always been legal," said Robert. "But we still need to find out who created the fake documents that started the investigation." "How do we do that?" "We're going to need a handwriting expert to analyze the forged signatures, and maybe a private detective to investigate the origin of the documents." "That will be expensive," said Michael. "Yes, it will, but it's necessary." At that moment, Robert's secretary entered the room. "Dr. Robert, there's a lady here who wants to speak with Mr. Michael. She says it's very important." "Who is she?" "She didn't want to identify herself. She only said that she worked for him for many years." Michael and Emma exchanged looks, curious. "Send her in," said Robert. The door opened and in came a woman of about 50 years old, with dark hair and a nervous demeanor. Michael recognized her immediately. It was Cheryl, his former secretary, who had resigned 2 months earlier. "Cheryl," exclaimed Michael. "What a surprise." "Dr. Michael," said Cheryl, clearly embarrassed, "I need to speak with you about something very important." "You can speak." "It's about the documents that disappeared from your safe." Michael straightened up in his chair. "Do you know something about this?" "I know more than I should," said Cheryl, sitting in a chair that Robert offered. "And I came here because I can no longer keep this secret." "What secret? What?" Cheryl took a deep breath before speaking. "It was your brother Richard who convinced me to open the safe for him. He said that you had asked him to get some documents, but that you had forgotten to give him the combination." "And you believed him?" "At first, no," said Cheryl, "but he found out some things about me, things that I didn't want anyone to know." "What kind of things?" Cheryl lowered her eyes, clearly ashamed. "My husband had been unemployed for months. I was taking money from the company's cash fund to pay our bills, always with the intention of paying it back, but—" "Cheryl," said Michael in a gentle voice, "why didn't you come to me? I would have helped." "I was ashamed," she said with tears in her eyes. "And your brother found out. I don't know how, but he found out. He said that if I didn't open the safe, he would tell you and I would be arrested." Michael felt a mixture of anger and pity. Richard had used Cheryl's desperation to get what he wanted. "How much did you take?" asked Michael. $5,000, murmured Cheryl. "I have it all written down. I was saving money to pay it back." "Forget that debt," said Michael. "You were a victim of my brother's manipulation, just like me." "Dr. Michael, there's one more thing," said Cheryl. "Your brother made me copy some documents before he took the originals. He said it was to make sure I wouldn't say anything to anyone." "What documents?" "Contracts, bank statements, old correspondence, everything he took from the safe." Robert leaned forward. "Do you still have those copies?" "Yes, I do," said Cheryl. "Hidden in my house. I was afraid to destroy them because I thought he might want them back." "Cheryl, can you give us those copies?" asked Michael. "Yes, I can," she said. "And there's one more thing. Yesterday, I saw your brother talking with a man I didn't know. They were in a coffee shop near downtown. They seemed to be planning something." "What kind of man?" "A man in a suit, but he didn't look like a lawyer or a businessman. He had the face of, I don't know how to explain it, someone who does dirty work." Emma, who had been quiet during the whole conversation, spoke up. "Can you describe this man?" "He was tall, thin, dark hair, had a small scar on his chin," said Cheryl. "And what were they talking about?" "I couldn't hear everything, but I heard your brother talking about a girl. He said she was getting in the way of his plans." Michael and Emma exchanged worried looks. "What girl?" asked Michael, though he suspected the answer. "I don't know," said Cheryl. "But your brother seemed very irritated. He said the girl was making you think too much and that it could mess everything up." Michael felt his blood run cold. Richard was talking about Emma. "Cheryl, can you go get these copies now?" asked Robert. "I sure can," she said. "I live nearby." "Great. Go pick them up and come back as soon as possible. And Cheryl, thank you for coming. I know it wasn't easy." After Cheryl left, Michael turned to Emma. "I think it's best if you stay at home with your grandmother for a few days," he said. "Why? Did I do something wrong?" No, of course not, but I'm worried about your safety. Mr. Michael, I'm not afraid, said Emma, and I won't abandon you now. Emma, you're a child. You shouldn't be involved in this mess. But I'm already involved, she said. And besides, 2 heads are better than 1, remember? Robert interrupted the discussion. Michael, I think the girl might be right. If your brother is really planning something against her, it's better she stays close to you where we can protect her. And how are we going to protect her? We don't even know what Richard is capable of. We'll find out, said Robert, and we'll be ready. Cheryl came back an hour later with a folder full of documents. It's all here, she said. All the copies your brother made me do. Robert examined the documents and looked visibly excited. This is even better than I expected, he said. With these documents, we can not only prove your innocence, Michael, but also prove that Richard forged documents and made a false report. What does that mean? It means we can turn the tables. Instead of you being investigated, he could be investigated. Michael felt a glimmer of hope, but also concern. If we do this, he'll get even more desperate, said Michael, and desperate people do dangerous things. As if hearing his words, Michael's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Michael Thompson, said a male voice he didn't recognize. Yes. You have something that belongs to Richard. He wants it back. Who is this? That doesn't matter. What matters is that you stop causing trouble for him. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you do. You have a little friend helping you, right? It'd be a shame if something happened to her. Michael felt his blood boil. If you lay a finger on her, you'll what? Laughed the man. You're in no position to threaten anyone, Michael. If you want the girl to stay safe, stop investigating your brother. The line went dead. Michael looked at Emma, who had heard the whole conversation. Now it's over, he said. You're going to your grandmother's house, and you're staying there until all this blows over. I won't, said Emma, crossing her arms. I won't let bad people scare me. Emma, this isn't a game. These people could be dangerous. I know it's not a game, she said. But I also know that if I run away now, they'll think they can scare anyone. And if they can scare anyone, they'll keep hurting other people too. Robert looked at the girl with admiration. She's right, Michael. And besides, now that they've threatened her, we have another crime to charge Richard with. How so? Threatening someone is a crime. And if we can prove he's behind this call, we have another reason to sue him. How are we going to prove it? We'll record every call you get from now on, and we'll ask the police to trace the number that called you. Michael was still reluctant, but he realized Emma wasn't going to change her mind. All right, he said, but from now on you don't leave my sight, and if I tell you to hide, you hide without question. Deal, said Emma, smiling. They spent the rest of the day organizing the documentation and preparing the counterattack. Robert contacted a private detective to investigate Richard and the man who had been seen with him. That evening, Michael took Emma out to dinner at a small, discreet restaurant. Why are you doing all this for me? Michael asked. Because you're a good person, Emma replied, and good people deserve to be helped. But you didn't even really know me before yesterday. Yes, I did, said Emma. Every time you passed by on the street, I saw how you treated people. You greeted the doorman, said good morning to the cleaning lady, stopped to give money to the homeless person on the corner. Bad people don't do those things. Michael was moved. He had never realized his small kindnesses were being noticed. And your grandmother? Isn't she worried about you? She is, said Emma. But she also said that sometimes we need to do what's right, even when it's dangerous. Your grandmother is a very wise woman. Yes, she is. She always says that God puts the right people in the right place at the right time. Michael smiled. Do you think God put me in that supermarket at that moment? I think God put me there, said Emma. You were already there being embarrassed. I was the one who showed up at the right time to help. Michael laughed, feeling lighter for the first time in days. After dinner, they went back to Michael's apartment. It was a spacious and comfortable place, but Emma was impressed by its size. Wow, how many people live here? She asked. Just me, Michael replied. Just you? Emma looked around, unbelieving. But there are 4 bedrooms. I know, said Michael, suddenly embarrassed by the size of the house. It really is too big. Don't you feel lonely? The question took Michael by surprise. He had long grown accustomed to the loneliness, but hearing a child ask that made him realize how lonely his life really was. Sometimes, he admitted. I feel lonely sometimes too, said Emma, even though I have Grandma, especially when I think about the future. Why do you think about the future? Because Grandma is already old. One day she won't be with me anymore, and then I'll have to manage on my own. Michael felt his heart tighten. Emma was so young, but she already carried worries that many adults didn't have. You don't need to worry about that now, he said. I know, said Emma, but I can't help thinking about it. They stayed silent for a few moments, each lost in their own thoughts. Emma, said Michael finally, after all this is over, would you like to keep seeing each other? I mean, not to help me with problems, but just to talk, maybe. Of course, said Emma, smiling. I would like that very much. And maybe I can help you with some things too. School, things like that. You would do that? I would do it with pleasure. Emma smiled, and Michael realized he had found something he didn't know he was looking for, a family. The next morning, they went to Robert's office, where the private detective they had hired was waiting for them with some information. The man your brother met at the coffee shop is named Vincent Rogers, said the detective, a middle-aged man named Barry. He has a police record for fraud and document forgery. That confirms what we suspected, said Robert. There's more, Barry continued. I managed to trace the number that called you yesterday. The phone is registered to a shell company that belongs to Vincent. Can we use that as proof? Yes, we can. And there's one more interesting thing. I found out your brother has been having financial difficulties for a few months. His company is almost bankrupt. Michael was surprised. Richard has always been very private about his business, said Michael. I never knew he was having problems. That's why the envy, said Emma. He saw you doing well while he was doing poorly. Exactly, Barry agreed, and that explains the reason for this whole scheme. If he could destroy you, he could take over part of your business. But that doesn't make sense, said Michael. Even if I lost everything, why would that benefit him? Because he has a plan, said Barry. According to my investigations, he's already negotiating with some of your clients, offering his company's services as an alternative to yours. Michael felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. He's trying to steal my clients. He's already stolen some, confirmed Barry. He's using the tax investigation as an excuse, saying your clients can't risk working with someone who's under investigation. This is unbelievable, murmured Michael. And there's more, said Barry. He's spreading rumors that you could be arrested at any moment. Some of your employees are already looking for other jobs. Michael sank into a chair, feeling the weight of the whole situation. How could he do this? He murmured. We're brothers. People like that don't see family, said Emma, putting her hand on Michael's shoulder. They only see what they want to have. Robert leaned forward. Michael, now that we know all this, we can take action. Let's report Richard for document forgery, slander, threats, and attempted misappropriation of your clients. Will that work? With the evidence we have, it will work, but we have to act fast before he causes more damage. At that moment, Michael's cell phone rang. It was a familiar number, his accountant, Charles. Michael, I need to speak with you urgently. What happened, Charles? Someone broke into my office last night. They only took the files related to your company. Michael felt his blood run cold. Are you sure they only took that? Yes. They went through everything but only took your folders. And Michael, there was a message left on my desk. What message? Stop helping those you shouldn't. I'm scared, Michael. I think it's best if I step away from your business for now. Michael hung up the phone, furious. Now he's broken into my accountant's office, he said to the others. Richard is desperate, said Robert. That means we're on the right track. Or that we're provoking a cornered animal, replied Michael. Barry spoke up. I have a suggestion. How about we arrange a meeting between you and your brother? A public place with plenty of witnesses. If we can get him to confess something, we have everything we need. He won't confess anything, said Michael. He might confess if he thinks he's already won, said Emma. People like that love to boast when they think they've won. The girl is right, agreed Barry. We can make him think you're giving up on everything. Then he might let his guard down. Michael thought for a few moments. How would we do that? You call him and say you want to talk, that you're tired of fighting and want to find a solution. He'll think he's broken you. And where would this meeting be? In a public place, with lots of people, and with several of our people scattered around recording everything. Michael still hesitated. What if it goes wrong? If it goes wrong, we stick with the original plan, said Robert, but if it works, we solve everything at once. Michael looked at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. All right, he said, let's try. Michael called Richard, putting the phone on speaker so everyone could hear. Richard, it's me, Michael. Michael, what a surprise, how are you? Not too well, to be honest. I'm thinking maybe it's time we talked. Talk about what? About everything that's happening. I'm tired of fighting. Maybe we can find a solution that's good for both of us. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Michael could almost hear Richard smiling. What kind of solution? Can we talk in person? How about we meet for lunch tomorrow? Where? At the mall restaurant. It's public, neutral. All right, said Richard. Noon? Perfect. See you tomorrow, brother. See you tomorrow. Michael hung up and looked at the others. Now we wait and hope it works. The rest of the day was spent on preparations. Barry organized a team of people to position themselves in the restaurant, each with recording equipment. Robert prepared the questions Michael should ask to try to get Richard to confess. Emma was a bit worried. Do you think it's safe? She asked. It's a public place, said Michael, and we'll have several people from our team nearby. Even so, I want to go along. No, said Michael categorically. Absolutely not, it's too dangerous. Mr. Michael, I promise to stay away, but I want to be there in case you need me. Emma, I can't risk your safety. And I can't stay at home worrying myself sick, she retorted. At least if I'm there, I'll know what's happening. After much discussion, they reached an agreement. Emma would sit at a table far away, accompanied by Barry, and would leave immediately if there was any sign of danger. On the morning of the meeting, Michael woke up nervous. It was the chance to resolve everything at once, but it was also a huge risk. Emma arrived early at his apartment, bringing breakfast that her grandmother had prepared. Grandma sent this for good luck, she said, handing over a package with homemade bread still warm. Your grandmother is an angel, said Michael. She said she'll be praying for us all day. Michael smiled, feeling touched by Mrs. Hazel's concern. At 11:30, they left for the mall. Barry and his team were already positioned in the restaurant, pretending to be regular customers. Michael arrived promptly at noon. Richard was already at a table in the back, smiling as if it were a friendly meeting between brothers. Michael? Said Richard, standing up to greet him. I'm glad you decided to be reasonable. Michael forced a smile and sat down. I think we've fought enough, he said. We're family, right? Exactly, agreed Richard. Family is what matters. They ordered lunch and chatted about trivialities for a few minutes. Michael was nervous but tried not to show it. Richard, he said finally, I need to understand something. How did this tax investigation start? Oh, you know how these things are, said Richard, cutting the meat on his plate. Someone must have filed a report. It happens a lot with successful businessmen. But who would file a report against me? Richard shrugged. Could have been anyone. A competitor, a disgruntled employee, or maybe someone who knows your business from the inside and noticed some irregularities. The way Richard said irregularities made it clear he knew exactly who had filed the report. What kind of irregularities? Asked Michael. Well, Michael, you know you've always been a bit careless with paperwork. You always left a lot of things for the accountants to handle without close supervision. But I always kept everything legal. Of course, said Richard, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But sometimes things can seem irregular even if they're legal, right? Michael realized Richard was being too careful. He decided to change strategy. Richard, I'm thinking about closing the company, Michael lied. Richard's face lit up. Really? I'm tired of all this stress. Maybe it's time to retire. But you're still too young to retire. Young but tired. And without the company, there would be no more problems with tax investigations. Richard could barely contain his excitement. "And what would you do with the clients?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "I don't know. Maybe I'd recommend another business owner to take over the contracts." "I could take them," said Richard quickly. "I mean, if you want a recommendation, I already have an established company." "You would take my clients?" "If you want me to, of course. It would be a way to keep the business in the family." Michael pretended to think. "I don't know if that would be fair to you. Some of those clients might be suspicious because of the investigation." "Oh, that's not a problem," said Richard, smiling. "Most of them are already looking for alternatives anyway. I've already spoken with a few." Michael felt a pang of anger but controlled himself. "You've already spoken to my clients?" "Just to reassure them," said Richard. "I said you were going through a rough patch, but that there were alternatives within the family." "I see," said Michael. "And what did you say about the investigation?" "The truth," answered Richard. "That it was based on incriminating documents someone handed over to the authorities." "What documents?" Richard realized he had said too much and tried to backtrack. "Oh, you know, documents in general. I don't know the details." "But you said incriminating documents. How do you know they're incriminating if you don't know the details?" Richard began to get visibly nervous. "Well, it's only logical they must be incriminating, otherwise there wouldn't be an investigation, right?" Michael decided to press harder. "Richard, can I ask you a direct question?" "Of course." "Did you file the complaint that started the investigation?" Richard nearly choked on his drink. "Me? Of course not. Why would I do such a thing? I don't know. That's why I'm asking." "Michael, I'm your brother. I would never do anything to harm you." "But you said you would take my clients. Doesn't that harm me?" "No, it helps you," said Richard, starting to get worked up. "If you want to close the company, it's better for the clients to stay with someone trustworthy, someone in the family." "Exactly." Michael took a deep breath and decided to lay all his cards on the table. "Richard, I know it was you who stole the documents from my safe." Richard's face turned pale. "What are you talking about?" "I have the security camera footage, I have Cheryl's testimony, and I have proof that you hired Vincent Rogers to threaten me." Richard looked around as if searching for a way out. "You're crazy," he murmured. "Am I? Then explain how you knew I was at the supermarket yesterday morning. Explain how you knew my card would be declined. Explain why you paid the cashier to humiliate me." Richard stood up abruptly. "I'm not going to sit here and listen to these ridiculous accusations." "Sit down, Richard," said Michael in a firm voice. "We have a lot to talk about." "We have nothing to talk about. You're paranoid." "I'm paranoid, or are you desperate because your plan didn't work?" Richard looked around again and noticed several people in the restaurant were looking at them. "What plan?" he asked, trying to lower his voice. "The plan to destroy me, to take over my business. The plan to forge documents to frame me. The plan to steal my clients while I was being investigated." "You can't prove any of that." "Yes, I can," said Michael. "And I will prove it, unless you confess everything now and try to fix the damage you've done." Richard was silent for a few moments, looking down. "You don't understand," he said finally. "Understand what?" "What it's like to live in your shadow your whole life." Michael was surprised by the change in his brother's tone. "Richard—" "No," interrupted Richard. "Let me speak. Your whole life, you've been the perfect son, the exemplary student, the successful businessman. And me? I've always just been Richard, Michael's younger brother. That doesn't justify what you did." "Yes, it does," exclaimed Richard, drawing attention from other tables. "Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to hear people talk about you as if I didn't exist? Oh, Michael achieved this, Michael achieved that. And when they asked about me, oh, Richard has a company too, but it's not like Michael's." Michael began to understand the extent of his brother's resentment. "Richard, you've always had your own accomplishments." "Accomplishments nobody noticed because yours were always bigger," said Richard with tears in his eyes. "I'm tired of being the less successful brother." "So you decided to destroy me?" "I decided to take what should have been mine from the beginning," said Richard. "Dad always said the family business should go to the oldest son. But you left home and built your own business. Left me to take care of Dad's company, which went bankrupt 2 years after he retired." Michael didn't know this story. "You never told me Dad's company had gone bankrupt." "Why would I tell you? So you could offer me help like I was some poor thing. So I could offer you help as a brother." I don't want your pity, Michael. I want my chance. And your chance was to destroy me? Richard took a deep breath as if making an important decision. Yes, he said. It was to destroy you. And you know what? I don't regret it. You've been too successful for too long. It was time for someone to knock you off your pedestal. Michael was shocked by the coldness in his brother's voice. Richard, do you realize you almost managed to destroy me completely? Almost? Laughed Richard. Michael, I already have. Your clients are already with me. Your employees are already looking for other jobs. Your reputation is ruined. And even if you prove the documents are fake, the doubt will always be there. You are mistaken. Am I? Richard smiled maliciously. And that little girl who's helping you. Very touching, Michael. But she can't save you from everything. The mention of Emma made Michael lose his patience. Leave Emma out of this. Why? She's your new weakness, right? After your daughter turned her back on you in the divorce, you adopted a replacement. Samantha didn't turn her back on me. No? Then why didn't she reach out to you after the newspaper article came out? Why didn't she defend you on social media? Michael felt a stab in his chest. It was true that Samantha hadn't contacted him. You know what the difference is between us, Michael? Continued Richard. You always believed people liked you for who you are. I always knew people only care about what you can do for them. That's not true. No? Then where is everyone now? Your friends? Your partners? Your employees? Where are they? Michael looked around the restaurant, where several people were watching them curiously. Suddenly he felt very alone. You know who's with me? He said, finding his voice again. An 8-year-old girl who has nothing to gain by helping me. A girl who spent all her savings to pay for my groceries. A girl who defends me even when adults threaten her. How touching, said Richard sarcastically. It is touching, said Michael, because it shows there are still good people in the world, people who do the right thing without expecting anything in return. And where will that get you? Will this little girl save your company? Will she get your clients back? Will she clean up your reputation? Michael leaned forward. Maybe not, but she reminded me of something I had forgotten. What? That what matters isn't what people can do for you. It's what you can do for people. Richard laughed. What cheap philosophy. Oh? Then explain one thing to me, Richard. With all your cleverness, with your whole brilliant plan, have you managed to be happy? The question took Richard by surprise. What are you talking about? I'm asking if you are happy. If, after all this, after knocking me off the pedestal as you said, you finally managed to be happy. Richard remained silent for a few moments. I'll be happy when I get what I deserve, he finally said. Which is what? Recognition, respect, success. And you think you'll get those things by destroying other people. I managed by destroying you. Michael shook his head. No, Richard, you didn't destroy me, you set me free. How so? You showed me who my true friends are. You showed me I was measuring my worth by the wrong things, and you gave me the chance to meet people like Emma, who reminded me what really matters in life. Richard became visibly irritated. What nonsense, Michael. Oh, then answer me one thing. When was the last time you helped someone without expecting anything in return? When was the last time you felt genuinely happy for someone else's well-being? Richard didn't answer. When was the last time someone sought you out just to talk, without wanting anything? Enough, said Richard, standing up. I didn't come here to listen to a sermon. What did you come here for? To brag? To see me humiliated? I came to see you accept reality. And what is reality? That you lost. That I won. And that now I'm going to have everything I should have had from the beginning. Michael stood up too. You know something, Richard? You can keep the clients, you can keep the company, you can keep everything. How generous of you, said Richard sarcastically. But there's one thing you will never have, Michael continued. What? The ability to look in the mirror and like the person you see. Richard turned red with anger. You know nothing about me. I know more than I'd like to, said Michael. I know you're capable of threatening an innocent child. I know you're capable of destroying your own family out of envy. And I know that even if you get everything you want, you will never be happy. Because happiness doesn't come from destroying others, it comes from building something good. And what have you built, Michael? Asked Richard. A company that's under investigation, a reputation that's ruined, a marriage that ended in divorce. I built the loyalty of a girl who barely knows me. I built the respect of people like Mr. Walter, who worked with me for years and never doubted me. I built a life where I can sleep peacefully, knowing I never purposely harmed anyone. Richard shook his head. You live in a fantasy world, Michael. And you live in a world where you can only feel good by destroying other people, Michael retorted. Between the two, I prefer my fantasy. Richard picked up his jacket and prepared to leave. This conversation is over. It is indeed, agreed Michael. But before you go, I want you to know one thing. What? I forgive you. Richard stopped halfway to the door. What? I forgive you, Richard. I forgive you for stealing my documents. I forgive you for forging evidence against me. I forgive you for trying to destroy my life. I didn't ask for your forgiveness. I know. But I'm giving it anyway, because you are my brother, and because I understand that all of this comes from a pain you've carried for a long time. Richard stood still for a few seconds, as if he didn't know how to react. I don't want your pity, he said finally. It's not pity, said Michael. It's brotherly love. Even after everything you've done, you're still my brother. And if one day you want to talk for real, without lies, without games, I'll be here. Richard left the restaurant without another word, leaving Michael alone at the table. Michael sat down again, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. The conversation hadn't gone exactly as planned, but at least now he knew the whole truth. A few minutes later, Emma appeared by his side. Are you all right, sir? She asked. I am, replied Michael, smiling at her. And you? Were you able to hear the conversation? I was. You were very brave. Brave? Yes. Forgiving a person who has done so much harm is very difficult. Michael looked at that little girl and wondered how she could be so wise. Emma, do you think I did the right thing? I do. Holding on to anger only hurts the one who holds it. Barry approached the table. Michael, we managed to record the entire conversation. We have enough confessions to prosecute your brother for several crimes. And now? Now we take everything to the police and the IRS. With these recordings and the documents we already have, your innocence will be proven quickly. Michael nodded, but he didn't feel the least bit vengeful. Barry, before we do anything, I want to talk to my lawyer. Of course, but may I ask why? Michael looked at Emma and then back at Barry. Because I want to make sure we're doing this for the right reasons. They left the mall together, with Michael feeling strangely at peace despite all the turmoil around him. In Robert's office, they reviewed the recordings of the conversation. It was clear that Richard had confessed to several crimes, and it would be easy to prosecute him. With this evidence, we can not only clear your name, Michael, but also ensure that Richard is punished, said Robert. Robert, can I ask you for something? Of course. Before we prosecute Richard, I want to give him one last chance to make things right. Michael, after everything he's done. Precisely because of everything he's done, said Michael. If he publicly retracts, admits his mistakes, and tries to repair the damage, perhaps we can resolve this without destroying his life too. Emma smiled. You are a very good person, she said. I'm not, replied Michael. I'm just trying to do what's right. Robert sighed. All right, we'll give him one more chance. But if he refuses, we go on the full offensive. Agreed. Michael called Richard once more. What do you want now? Asked Richard, his voice irritated. I want to give you one last opportunity. Opportunity for what? To do the right thing. To publicly admit what you did and try to repair the damage. Richard laughed. You're crazy if you think I'm going to incriminate myself. Richard, I have recordings of our conversation at the restaurant. I have all the evidence I need to prosecute you. I'm offering you a dignified way out. There was a long pause. What kind of way out? You publicly admit that you forged documents and made a false accusation. You return my clients. You pay compensation for the damages caused, and I won't prosecute you criminally. And why would I do that? Because if you don't, I will use all the evidence I have to ensure you go to jail. And then, instead of just losing the clients you stole, you'll lose everything." Richard was silent for several minutes. "Would you really give me this chance?" he asked finally. "I would. You're my brother, Richard. I don't want to see you in jail. Even after everything I've done, especially after everything you've done, because I realized you did it out of pain, not pure malice. Michael, You what? I messed everything up, didn't I?" "You did, but there's still time to fix it." Richard took a deep breath. "All right, I will publicly retract." Michael felt a wave of relief. "Really? Really? But I need a few days to get things in order." "How much time do you need?" "A week." "All right. But Richard, if you try to run or hide anything—" "I won't run," said Richard. "I'm tired of living like a criminal." When Michael hung up the phone, Emma was smiling. "I think your brother is going to do the right thing," she said. "I hope so," replied Michael. "For him and for all of us." The following week, Richard kept his word. He gave an interview to the same newspaper that had published the story about Michael, confessing that he had forged documents and made a false accusation out of envy. The story had a huge impact, and Michael saw his reputation quickly restored. Clients started seeking him out again. Employees withdrew their resignation notices, and the tax investigation was closed. But the most important thing for Michael wasn't the recovery of his business. It was the phone call he received from his daughter, Samantha. "Dad," she said with emotion in her voice. "Samantha, how are you, my dear?" "I'm fine. Dad, I saw the story about Uncle Richard. I'm sorry I didn't reach out to you sooner." "You don't need to apologize, sweetheart." "Yes, I do. I should have trusted you from the beginning. I should have known you would never do anything wrong. What matters is that you're calling now." "Dad, can I visit you this weekend? I want to get to know you better. I feel like we grew apart after the divorce." Michael felt tears in his eyes. "Of course you can come. It will be wonderful." "And Dad, I heard about a girl who helped you through all this. I'd like to meet her too." Michael looked at Emma, who was sitting in the living room playing with a puzzle. "I'm sure she'll be delighted to meet you too." A month later, Michael's life had almost returned to normal. His company was performing better than ever. His relationship with Samantha had strengthened, and Richard was fulfilling a community service agreement instead of facing criminal charges. But the biggest change in Michael's life was Emma. They had become practically inseparable. Michael helped with her studies, and she continued working selling sweets, but now by choice, not out of necessity. One Saturday afternoon, they were sitting in the park near Emma's apartment when she asked a question that took him by surprise. "Mr. Michael, have you ever thought about having more children?" "Why do you ask?" "Just curious, really." Michael thought for a few moments. "You know, Emma, I always wanted to have more children. But after the divorce, I thought I wouldn't have that opportunity again. And now I've realized that family isn't just about sharing the same genes. It's about caring for each other." Emma smiled. "So does that mean we're family?" Michael felt his heart warm. "If you want us to be, yes, we are family." "I really want that," said Emma, throwing herself into his arms. Michael hugged her tightly, realizing he had found something far more valuable than any company or bank account, a family built on love and not just blood. A few months later, Michael formalized custody of Emma, with Mrs. Hazel's enthusiastic blessing. Samantha had become a loving older sister, and even Richard had reconnected with the family, trying to rebuild the bridges he had burned. End of story. And you? What did you think of this story of transformation and forgiveness? Like Michael, do you believe it's possible to forgive even when we're betrayed by those we least expect? Leave your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one.